Okay, here I'm going to be reading Mr. Don's Charlemagne Reading. And you're going to need this information to make your 5 slides for Mr. Dawson's class. And the website is right here, and it's in Mr. Dawson's Schoology link if you need to look at it. So you need to think about 5 main things about Charlemagne. Charlemagne was one of medieval Europe's most famous kings. He became a king of the Franks at age 26 in 768 CE when his father died. He inherited his kingdom from his father Pepin the Short, who had inherited it from his grandfather Charles Martel, also known as Charles the Hammer. Pepin and Charles Martel were good kings, but Charlemagne was a far better one, and he was much more colorful. His subjects loved to brag about him. So, Pepin and Charles were good kings, but Charlemagne was far better. He was over 6 feet tall, with long blonde hair that seemed to glow in the sun. He was always seen laughing, joking, or singing. Charlemagne was not one to sit on a throne and rule. He was always roaming about, either in one of his castles or through the countryside. He never just plain walked. He always strode. His dogs were his constant companions, playing and barking wherever he went. If you wanted the king to do something, you had to walk with him. Charlemagne was reputed to have a great memory. He always addressed everyone by name. He seemed to know everyone from the top princes down to the lowliest peasant. Okay, so what do we know about him? He was tall. He was always laughing and joking and singing. He was always roaming about. He liked his dogs. If you wanted him to do something, you had to walk with him. He had a great memory, and he remembered everyone by name. Charlemagne always led his troops into battle. He always wore a bright blue cape over his armor so that he could easily be seen. He was a great warrior. Even though he fought in many battles, he managed to survive them all and live into his 70s. Since most people died much younger during the medieval times, this was another wonder and part of his mystique. So, he lived into his 70s. He liked to lead his troops in battle, and he always wore a bright blue cape, and he was a great warrior. The Franks were the great warrior tribe. Charlemagne and the Franks, that's his group of people that he was in charge of, defeated most of the other tribes in Europe and expanded the Frankish Empire to cover Germany, France, Italy, and parts of Spain. This also included Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg, and Denmark. Charlemagne means Charles the Great, and he certainly was. Some of the things he accomplished are coming up, but let's go back to this again. So I like to go back after I read a little bit and see what I know. He was with the Franks. They were a great warrior tribe. They expanded the Frankish Empire, and look at all these countries they had: Germany, France, Italy, and parts of Spain, which included Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg, and Denmark. And Charlemagne, the word itself, means Charles the Great. You could also do how he was famous, how you could describe him. You could talk about him as a leader in war and how he expanded his kingdom. So there's a lot of things. I put 1, 2, 3, 4. Trial by ordeal or trial by jury. So these are the important things that Charlemagne did that they were just talking about. One of the most important things Charlemagne did for his people was to do away with the old system of trial by ordeal and place it with by trial and jury. Okay? So basically, instead of you doing something wrong and it caused a problem, they had a jury where they actually had people kind of decide whether you did something right or wrong, rather than just, you did it, you're executed or whatever. So he was kind of fair. That makes him kind of fair. Education and preservation. Another change Charlemagne introduced was his learning center at his main castle. Charlemagne brought scholars from all over the world to his new learning center. He put them back to work teaching others how to read and write. He also had them copy all the old manuscripts that he could find. During this copying, a system of illustrating and painting with gold foil was developed. These copies, known as eliminated manuscripts, are known as. Charlemagne could read, but he could not write. His fingers were too gnarled and battered from war to hold a pen. He used to keep writing materials under his pillow. When he couldn't sleep, he would practice writing, hoping to exercise his fingers enough to hold a pen, but without success. He also opened schools around his empire. Many of the sons of the nobles who were sent to these schools thought they would not have to work very hard. They were wrong. Charlemagne himself visited his schools and saw to it that the boys realized they had a great deal of work to do. Okay, so with education, he introduced a learning center at his castle. He brought scholars from all over the world. He made them teach others how to read and write. That was huge back then. Okay. He copied all the old manuscripts he could find and came up with a system of illustrating called the illuminated manuscripts, because they were gold. But Charlemagne could read, but he could not write because of his fingers were too gnarled and battered. But he was hoping he could practice, but he was not successful. He opened schools all over his empire, and they had to work very hard. So if you went to school there, you had a great deal of work to do. Okay. Government. Charlemagne created a new government system to rule the huge empire he created. He created a new class of nobles called counts. Each count was responsible for his district, usually the size of a small country. So kind of like a governor. The counts ruled in the name of Charlemagne. To ensure that the counts were ruling wisely, Charlemagne made surprise visits on each of them at least once a year and sometimes more. So Charlemagne had a new system to rule the huge. He had a new class of nobles called counts. And the counts ruled in the name of Charlemagne, and Charlemagne visited them at least once a year. So that was new with the government. And with money, standardized money, each count appointed tax collectors to collect the yearly taxes. The amount of tax was set up based on the population, so everyone knew how much tax they owed. But there was a problem. Since most people paid their taxes through barter, the local tax collector could set the value for the barter. So Charlemagne came up with a better system. He created silver coins, each with a set value to use instead. That sounds familiar. Thus, the farmer could sell his crops for silver coins and then pay his tax with the silver coins. There was no way to cheat on this. Everyone, especially the peasants, loved the new system because you could start collecting your money and it was fair to me. So He also had tax collectors and yearly taxes, so Charlemagne came up with this better system, silver coins with a set value. And everybody seemed to love it. All right, so that's the reading for there, and now you need to come up with 5 slides that describe Charlemagne. And I suggest, you do one about education, you do one about the new government, you could do one about money, you could do one about a trial by a jury, which made things a lot more fair. 5, 6, 7, 8 things there. You only need to do 5 on your slides. Okay.